Hello, welcome to the 10th edition Principles of Microeconomics with Gregory Mankiw, going into Chapter 16, Monopolies. We'll be recording at my residence, so if you hear dogs or people, that is why we're not in the studio today. All right, we're just going to go over monopolies. It's not a very long chapter. We hope to actually get these things done fairly soon. All right, we're going to talk about the economies of scale first, and then get on to what we refer to as monopoly is from an economic standpoint. And from there, we will have a brief display of what is the difference between perfect competition and a monopoly. Economies of scale that are the benefits of having a monopoly. Essentially, when we refer to something, the economies of scale, it simply means that you have a specialization or a diversified workforce or production cycle of some type. You're not doing everything yourself. You're divvying up work between different entities. Therefore, you should be able to make more of something or good or service, and the cost should go down. The classic example they use in economic books is the story of Robinson Crusoe. If you've never heard of that, it's simply a gentleman who was on an old wooden ship. In a storm, the ship crashed into an island or was sunk. He's the only survivor. He's on the island and he needs to eat, and one of the most abundant things around are coconuts and bananas and trees. He can climb one tree, get so many coconuts or bananas and come back down. It's a lot of work. Or he can spend time to build a ladder. It's a lot easier to go up and down with a ladder, so he spends a little time not hunting for food, builds the ladder, and now he's become more efficient. He becomes better because of the production cycle, and at some point in the island there's one other person, a native that he names Friday. Now there are two people. One person can build more ladders, another person can go hunt for food. And as you can see, the more people you add, the more food you can actually hunt for. That is essentially the economies of scale. Now let's talk about a demand curve for competition and a monopolistic demand curve. As you remember from the last chapter 15, the demand curve is pretty much flat. It is a horizontal line. As we can see, we have a different demand curve for monopolistic. The difference is because it's perfect competition, meaning you can't do much of anything and the goods are pretty much ubiquitous. You can't change the price. If you lower the price, you're just not going to get as much money as you could. So most businesses just keep in mind what the market will bear. If it is a monopoly or monopolistic, you can change the price because it's unique. And if it is a pure monopoly, you're the only one with the item. So you have a different set of rules. You still have a demand schedule. The more you charge for it, the fewer units you will sell. But as you can see, the difference between the two is completely different. In the next slide, we'll get into how we actually calculate profits and losses on this. Let's say you're in a bottled water at probably $11 a gallon. You're probably not going to sell as much. However, if you drop it down to 10, which you can do looking not only vertically but horizontally, your marginal revenue on the end in row 5 goes from nothing to $1. So what is the marginal revenue? How much additional revenue you get by making that 1 unit change? And you'll notice that you have average revenue, total revenue, and price. So you've gone from no gallons at $11, which is interesting, but 1 gallon of water tends to sell at $10. 2 gallons, you have another unit being sold if you drop the price to $9. And you can see, well, 2 times 9, 18, going across, the average revenue is $18, 2 units, $9, and it's kind of self-explanatory on this one. What do you gain as far as that additional unit? A difference of $8 from before. And you'll notice the marginal revenue is the difference between the last total revenue and the first and the one above it. So all the way down, we're referring to that last column, column 5. At some point, you gain a little bit, and right around 5 to 6 gallons, and you're charging about $30, it gets to zero, or you're making about $30. And you can see it works out perfectly. You can either sell 5 units at a price of $6 or 6 units at a price of $5, back to your 30, and then you have the issue of which one do you want. You want to sell a few more units, or do you want to make the same amount of profit but a little less work? And there's no change between the two. So this is your cutoff point. You have a choice. It's not going to matter that much to you, but do you want to make an additional unit, lower the price, and end up with the same thing? You can see it goes further down. You start to lose revenue, and you actually lose money. So you would never have a quantity of 7 or 8 based on this, because you'd have to drop the price to entice the consumers to buy it, and you'd start to lose money compared to something else you could be doing. It's not to say that you wouldn't make a profit, but compared to what you could with the other units and the other price, you're actually losing a little bit. Moving how we put that on a curve, our average demand as far as revenue, we've calculated that already. Now, we've also have a lovely graph instituting or characterizing our marginal revenue, again, per unit. What is the change? As you can see, that marginal revenue is below what the average demand is for water. Think of cases of bottled water. So there is a lovely gap between the two. When you have perfect competition, you don't have as much of a gap. That's going to become instrumental in a moment. How do you figure out what the maximum profits are? Well, there's our demand curve and our revenue curve. And what you're looking for is that marginal cost. How much is this per unit? Somewhere between that 5 and 6 units being put together. It could be 5 units, could be 5,000, could be 5 million units. But you're looking at the cost again, it goes up a little bit more because of variable cost. The fixed costs are already there, which is why our chart for marginal cost doesn't start at 0. When they cross, this is where you have revenue and cost equaling. Remember, we discussed that in chapter 15. Where they are equal, that's when you simply go up to what is the demand. And you can see the demand price point far and away is greater than when marginal cost and marginal revenue equal out. This is the benefit of having a monopoly. Again, if you had perfect competition, the lines would be right about equal. So you get that. What do we do with that information? We figure out where's our profit. There's the monopoly profit. Our average total cost is a little below that. So this is our cost at that particular point, right where you have marginal cost and revenue. Again, total cost is a little different. You go straight up, and there's where the maximum point of production should be. Everything in that nice little tan box is the additional profit you get from having a monopoly. A quick recap. You derive our marginal revenue curve. We find our Q point, revenue and cost equal out. And we have our demand curve, which goes above that. Where's our profit at? The price is above. As long as it is above our average total cost, that is the amount of profit that you will earn. Where does this usually come into play? Usually we think of monopolies as things that you have as far as some license or some bit of technology or research that you can sell. This comes into play if we're doing say, a new drug that cures dandruff. Yeah, we can't have dandruff. That just looks bad. And you like to wear dark clothes in the winter. You don't want dandruff. That's just going to make you look bad. So, after the price of all of these fun things, patent expires, we have our marginal cost, and it evens out. And we're looking at, again, economies of scale. There is our demand. There is where we have the marginal revenue. You'll notice the 2 points on that horizontal line. The competitive market, there's not much you can do. Marginal cost and revenue equal out. However, with a monopoly, and you do not have the ability, you do not have any competition, you're the only one selling the miracle dandruff cure, this is what you have. So that additional revenue moving from the point to the right to the left on the marginal cost graph is the additional revenue that you have because you have a monopoly. The efficiency of the output, you're trying to figure out where, again, to put these points, demand and marginal cost. One side is the cost to the monopolist of our point E. We always have that as a point we have in all of our equations. Our equilibrium point. You could do that, but the value to the buyers would not surpass what the marginal cost is. You obviously want to be on the left side of our equilibrium point where the value to the buyers exceeds the cost to the monopolist. Again, cases of bottled water, you're in the desert, you're willing to pay a little bit more. That miracle dandruff drug, whatever it may be, you're probably going to be on the left side because you're a monopolist. You're not looking for quantity, you're looking for quality. Now, prior chapters may have heard us talking about this. There is a complete inefficiency in a monopoly. A monopolist can charge above the marginal cost. It's not good for all of the customers. That means the production and the quality of the goods sold by the monopoly below the social equilibrium level, meaning there are places where you can actually sell this, but it wouldn't be profitable you as it could be. Our demand curve, our revenue curve, and our marginal cost again. If you try to sell where it is actually the equilibrium point, that is dead weight loss. Meaning there are a bunch of people who will be willing to pay the monopoly price. If you move any further, you're actually selling it below what the maximum profit would be. That would not be efficient. You could do that if you want to. And again, in a pure competitive setting, you'd sell at the equilibrium or make enough units there where you have the equilibrium point. Here, that is actually a loss to you compared to what you could be making. Now, for the sake of argument, let's say you want to sell as many units as possible. Now, there are some customers who couldn't afford it who may need it. Well, if it's a serious drug, they could not sell it. So you try to have discriminate perfectly as far as price means you're going to sell it at all points. What does it mean to have a discrimination price? This is a discrimination, and this is a commonly used one in some textbooks. Back in the day, there were more movie theaters. There's still some that exist. And if there is a movie theater near you, you can actually look at when the movie is going to be shown. They probably still have this when it has pricing based upon the time of day and even the day. A slow period before was Tuesday. They had actually marked the ticket prices lower on Tuesday so people could come in. Maybe they didn't have it, maybe they could wait, but this would be an example of a discrimination price. They use this for a lot of events and things of that nature. Okay, you don't get the first one, or you don't get the first bite at the apple, as it were, but you still want to use the product. So I lower the price based on some reason. This is discount pricings for seniors, discount prices for children. Children eat for free, children get half off. The reason they do that is to sell more units at that lower price. Now, children generally don't walk into restaurants alone, so they're going to make more of the money and the profit on the adults, and they'll sell few more units at a discriminatory price. You weren't going to sell a kid's meal at an adult price anyway, so in theory, the discrimination is fitting the actual example. Marginal prices for our natural monopoly. Our total average cost, again, due to the efficiencies of scale, or the economics of scale, is a downward sloping curve. Remember from chapter 15, we talked a little bit about the soup bowl effect. The price keeps dropping to a certain point, then it'll level out. Our marginal costs tend to stay fixed. And our demand, again, as the price drops, the quantity demanded will go up. As long as the cost is below our average total cost, that creates a bit of a problem or a loss. In this case, you probably wouldn't even create it because right where you have our demand hitting our marginal cost, the average total cost exceeds it. So you wouldn't even go through with the particular production. Good thing to learn if you're trying to get into business and you haven't done the quote unquote price points and whether or not it's profitable. Our last slide for the day, just a quick comparison between perfect competition and a monopoly. And I won't get into a lot of detail other than to mention where you have differences. It's probably a little more interesting for you as an economist. Number of firms, many in one. Profit margin, when the marginal revenue equals that. When profit is above the marginal revenue, you see how they counterbalance. When you can have a long run profit, you can monopoly. Short run, not as much. And price discrimination, is it possible? If you have the only product, yes. If it's a product that everyone has, again, apples and oranges, you probably cannot run a discriminatory pricing schedule. Okay, short chapter, brief summary, outstanding work. Remember, you got this. If you're looking at this for educational purposes, please call your instructor for more if you needed help, or if you're just looking at that because you wanted to learn a little bit more, hopefully you found it interesting. Like, share, and all that other good stuff. Thank you.